Yeah, I guess interests are different at different ages, and I imagine that children, when they're introduced at a young age to the topic, have an interest in it because they're told that it's important, and they believe the adults around about them, and so uh, they try to copy and the habits that we learn when we're very young, they stay with us forever. So if we can learn a series of good habits, then this in general is in, in in general is a good thing if we also understand the bigger picture of things as well. Having a clean environment has always been a problem down throughout history. Uh, Life is messy, shall we say, and very often we have to deal with that mess. And yeah, the greatest single human produce is waste, and we need to be able to manage that in a sensible way. Although, in my experience, individual people don't produce as much waste as, say, communities or companies, and that is something that is worth focusing on. It's also a topic that, when you think about systems of life and how things work, I think it's something that not a lot of people know about. Maybe they should. They should know about where the water comes from and whether or not it's clean, and how the water gets cleaned, or how waste should be processed. Um, it's all these are all important topics, and they're sort of avoided a lot of the time. And the systems within which we live, I personally, I think they should be studied more and understood more. That we have a lot of compartmentalization in education, and I prefer more of a Renaissance school in terms of an approach to education, which is that in a Renaissance school, you are expected to know everything rather than something, and it's a more complex topic, but I think that making the connections between what is important in different topics is necessary. I'll give an example of this. In ancient Greece, within communities, different people had different roles naturally. However, these roles were not given to elected representatives. These roles were randomly chosen. And each person, for example, there was a bag, and within the bag, this was actually done in this time. There was a bag, and in the bag were different roles that people had in the community for periods of time, 3 months, 6 months, a year. And people would put their hand into the bag and they would take out the role or the job, and it would be random. And you would be expected to be able to do any of the jobs that were in the bag. Rather than be specifically trained to do one job, you were expected to be able to do all of the jobs. And this created what I would call a more Renaissance mindset, which is an ability to understand how everything connects together rather than how just one thing works. Cross-curricular studies
Mm.
would be the educational equivalent of that idea. Um, well, look at it this way: the planet is fine; it's the people that need saved. The planet was the planet was here before us, and it will be here after us. Yeah, how do you teach people to appreciate things? I mean, that is that, 'cause that's such a personal element. That appreciation is based on the value, and your value is based on your experience. And so if you don't have the right kind of experience, you're never going to value or appreciate things. That's why people take things and just throw it away, because
Mm.
their experience is that they don't understand the values involved in the activity. And there's a lot of the wrong values presented in life. I mean, your values are based on the moral content of society and character. And you can't appreciate it. It's a domino effect. You can't appreciate if you don't have value. The values come from respecting things. Respect is about character. It's about moral perspective in life, and understanding the learning not to waste things is is important. And I've noticed that as well in Western culture, that sometimes people have extra things and they don't really respect the fact that they've got extra things. And do you do you really need two of everything? That there's a certain perhaps practicality to it sometimes, but I noticed, spending a long time in Central and Eastern Europe as opposed to Western Europe, there's a big values difference
Mm.
between those two areas. And it's classical in Britain that people will have a big wardrobe full of a lot of clothes, whereas you go over to the Ukraine, for example, and people will
Mm.
have one or two shirts and one pair of trainers, and they
Mm.
they will they will have the basic necessities of life, and not invest in things that they don't absolutely need. And food is another classic example of that. And learning perhaps to be frugal is important, living with less, uh, rather than in terms of objects, live in abundance in terms of love, perhaps, and the energy that you put into things. Um, but as human beings, I think we're all collectors, and sometimes we collect the wrong things. Yeah, in life, and we do have ourselves surrounded by a lot of objects, which is why I think the future is going to be interesting, because I think there's a movement towards um, less. And it's a financially pressured move. It's not a natural move, but it's very interesting that we sort of move to less towards the ownership of things and more towards the the so the renting of things, in terms of sort of usage of cars, or where we live. And the World Economic Forum produces reports where they say, well, in the future, the aim is that nobody will own everything, but everybody will be happier, because less ownership will mean less responsibilities. Now that's an interesting philosophy, and has like everything, there's a plus and a minus, and a positive and a negative to it. But um, it is very interesting. I get frustrated when my kids don't eat all the food, that they're given, and then they want something else. I'm like, well, you didn't finish your last meal, right? So I'm going to take the last meal, I'm going to put it in the fridge, and then when you finish that, you'll get something else. We're did appreciate what you've got.
Mm.
Yeah, because the future is not guaranteed. The children don't learn that until you tell the children to cook, and the children are like, "What do you mean cook?" I'm like, "Well, cook. Well, we'll go and look in the kitchen for food." And they go look in the kitchen, and there's no food in the kitchen. They're like, "Well, there's nothing to cook with." Ah, right. Now you begin to understand
Mm.
that if you want to cook, you have to go and buy the ingredients that you need first. And it's not just something gets taken out of the cupboard and cooked. It's that you got to plan and prepare and organize, and go shopping and find the right ingredients, and then get the recipe, and put everything together. And there's a whole network of things that are complex, involved in the process. Yet chil- we're never, when we're given things, we never appreciate them. Not everything, almost everything for free is rejected. Whether it's tangible, physical, or intangible, that everything for free is disrespected for to a certain extent. And when there's, and the same as, you know, when you get extra of something, like when there's the buffet, and you load up your plate with as much as you can eat, and and I was the same before I moved out to Slovakia and lived with people who had very little. Yeah, and then I learned very quickly that to preserve what you have, and to and to value it, and the Western lifestyle, people take so much take it for granted. It's a great phrase. Take something for granted. They take everything for granted. The shops are going to be there. The food's going to be on the shelves. The you're going to, just the fact that you can go on eBay or Amazon and order something and it gets delivered to your door, I think is perhaps the most amazing thing in human history ever, right? Yeah, like I can click a button on my phone and something arrives at my door. I will forever be amazed at that, right? I mean, I'll be like, oh my God, this is incredible. Like, after perhaps we have actually evolved to a certain extent to live in that kind of world. I will forever be amazed at that, and I'm not sure that the younger generation appreciate that yet. I had friends in Slovakia who told me that they didn't have a phone at home. It's just that we're going back, say, 40 years, but you know, they were like, they didn't have a phone at home because the government said they ran out of numbers under communism. Yeah, yeah, and yeah, it was an amazing thing, and the people, when people got it, they were excited and they really appreciated it because it was something unique and special. And all of those things. Writing letters if you wanted to communicate to somebody. You know, people had pen pals, and they actually sat down and wrote letters to the pen pals. Or even if you wanted to watch a film, right? Like there would be an advertisement on television, which is an amazing thing for a film. And if the film didn't come to the local cinema, which was not really local, you travel to get there, and there were only two screens, and there were two screens, better than one, you know, in the local cinema. And if the film didn't come to the local cinema, then you had to wait for it to come to video, and then you had to go to a video shop. So sometimes you'd wait a year to see a film that you wanted to see. You'd wait a year to see to see it. No, yeah, no. People binge watch Netflix in a weekend, where they watch a whole series in a weekend. And there's another great word, binge, right? You know, just to take a lot of something very quickly and not appreciate it. And and so I'm not sure how to I'm not sure how we communicate that, you know, to the children. It's like I try to explain it to my son that if I wanted to watch a film, sometimes I had to wait a year to watch the film. And you can watch it within 24 hours of it coming out instantly. The difference between instant and a year is it's a mindset of patience and gratitude and understanding that it's really hard to communicate to people. Or even the idea that under communism people couldn't travel out of the country a lot of the time, and the travel was very, very limited, and that was a huge problem. So just appreciating things, and that's a lot of what I learned in Slovakia, was that you don't that did you? We don't need a lot of what we have, right? It's nice to have extras, and technology is a powerful form of magic, but um, I think that Slovak people have a certain understanding of value due to this experience in the past, where, as you said, you're like to your as you said to your son, don't waste the food, right? Because it's not bad food, so don't waste it, right? Yeah, and we see what has happened in the West when you get a lot of everything, right? We have huge problems with health, we have huge problems with obesity. Um, as a person who's interested in personal health and fitness, I look around at our culture and I'm like, oh my God, we we missed it. It's where Slovak people have this appreciation of everything. It's like, it's an apple. Whoa. Right. Right. People here are like, "Ooh, it's an apple, whatever." It's just like, no, 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 value everything because it all matters. It's all important.